friends, and welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of February. Today is technically the February 27th as I'm filming this, but it's pretty much the end of the month. I don't think I'm going to be finishing any other books tomorrow, and if I do end up reading anything else in February, I'll just talk about it in my March wrap-up, but I don't think I'll finish anything else, so I decided to film this a day early and just jump into the books that I read in this month. So I just wanted to start off by mentioning that this month I had 8 books on my TBR and I read 5 of them, so I'm pretty proud of that. And I read a total of 7 books this month, so I read 2 books that were not on my TBR. One of them was a comic and one was a very short, like non-fiction, empowering kind of book, which I read today and listened to the audiobook for that, and I really enjoyed it. So let's hop in and I'll give you some of my statistics as well. Alright, so this is a new format that I'm going to be doing for my wrap-ups, but instead of just talking about all the books that I read, which I will do, I also wanted to share some stats. So this month I read 6 books that were fiction and 1 that was nonfiction. I read 1 comic book, which is Saga Volume 6, and I read 1 bonus epilogue for one of the books I read, but this I'm not counting towards the 7 books that I actually finished in this month. So within the breakdown of the books that I read 2 historical fiction books, and that was Written in My Own Heart's Blood and Firefly Lane by Kristen Hannah. And then I read 2 romance books. These are contemporary romances. So I read Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, and I read Unloved by Peyton Corinne. And I read 2 fantasy books. So I read Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee, which was a novella, so that's more of a shorter book. And I read Saga Volume 6, which is a fantasy, and that's a comic. Alright, so the shortest book I read this month, if we're including the bonus epilogue, was 13 pages, and that was the Act Your Age, Eve Brown bonus epilogue. If we're not including that, the shortest actual novel that I read was Untethered Sky, and that was the novella by Fonda Lee, and that was 150 pages. The longest book that I read this month was Written in My Own Heart's Blood, and that was 842 pages. And that took me a while to read because the pages were like Bible thin and the text was super small, so it would have been like over 1,000 pages in regular size font. So in terms of the ways that I read these books, I read 3 books physically, I read 3 through audiobook, so that means that I listened to them, and I read 1 ebook. So I did a good amount of physical and audiobook listening, and I only had 1 ebook this month, which is pretty good for me because I feel like I'm always neglecting my physical books. So that means I did a pretty good job reading some of my physical books this month. Alright, so I'm going to start with the first book that I finished this month, and it took me until almost mid-February to finish my first book this month. And of course, you guessed it, it is Written in My Own Heart's Blood by Diana Gabaldon. I started reading this towards the end of January, I want to say January 20 or so, and I finished reading this around February 16, 18, somewhere around there, I don't know exactly, but this is the continuation of the Outlander series. This is following An Echo in the Bone, so this is the 8th novel of 9 already published, and Diana Gabaldon has planned to publish a 10th book, but she is currently working on it. It's not out yet. And this story picks up right where we leave off with An Echo in the Bone. I don't want to share too much about it because I don't want to share spoilers on this. I will be doing like a full review about it in its own separate video, so I don't want to go too deep into the spoilers here, but we are getting some more of the Brianna, Roger, and Jemmy storyline, and we get a wrap up to what's happening there. I really like that storyline. It's the one that I felt the most connected to when reading this book, and I think it was my favorite storyline. For the first time, Bri, Roger, and Jem storyline was my favorite, which was surprising to me. I also really like seeing kind of the aftermath and the fallout of the things that happened with Lord John and Jamie, and just all the things that John goes through in this book. It's really heart-wrenching to see him being shuffled from place to place, being a prisoner and being suspected of being a spy, but he ends up making it out okay towards the end of this book, so I'm really happy with that. And we also get to see Claire's journey in this book. Her story here is a little bit heartbreaking too. I don't want to go into what happens to her, but she goes through some medical issues in this, and you also see her treating patients in this one once again. And we see Jamie on the front lines in the American War for Independence. And I didn't really like the stuff with Jamie on the front lines of the American War for Independence, but I understood that it was necessary. She is writing about that period of time and that history, so he is involved. He is a Continental soldier, and he's actually a general in this one, so he was promoted. And we also get to see more of Denny, Dottie, and some of the other side characters. Dottie and Hal, who are Lord John's family, show up in this one and the last one, and that isn't really something that really shows up in the show. They are in these books and they have some important roles to play in this, and I kind of felt that lack of them in the show, so definitely that was something that I was looking for and I really appreciated about the books. And also we see the development of Ian and Rachel's relationship in this further, so we get to see that develop, and some really sad things happen with Rollo in this one. I felt so bad for him in this one, but he is getting older, so you know, we kind of saw some of the things that happening in this book coming. But I really enjoyed this installment. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it's definitely near the top for me. It's not like 1 or 2, I don't think, right now, but I haven't done a recent like re-ranking of the books in my own head. So I'll let you know what my final thoughts on this end up being and how I end up ranking it in the series once I've read the 9th book so far. And then if she publishes the 10th book, I'll also re-rank it and let you know my thoughts on the books then. But that's kind of where I'm at with this one. I really liked it. It took me a while to get through though, and there were some sections that I just didn't really want to keep reading. Like there were parts of this that I was like, oh, okay, it's a lot of war, so time to move on. But those are just some of my general thoughts on this. I'll go into some more deep thoughts on this later on, but this is the first book that I finished reading in January. It was a physical read, and oh my goodness, I strained my eyes reading this so much, so I had to listen to a couple of audiobooks after this. The next book I read, I don't have a physical copy of, but I did listen to the audiobook of this on Libro FM. And if you haven't checked out Libro FM, I highly recommend you do so if you'd like to listen to audiobooks. They are a great alternative to Audible, and I'm always listening to audiobooks on there. I absolutely love it. But I listened to Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, and this is the 3rd book in the Brown Sisters series. I read the first book, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, in 2020 or 2021, and I really enjoyed it. That was a 5-star read from me, and this one was also a 5-star read, no exception. I absolutely loved it. The autism representation in this one was really well done in my opinion, but take it with a grain of salt because I am not on the autism spectrum, but I really enjoyed it. I liked how the 2 main characters were kind of enemies and then they become lovers at the end, so it's definitely got some enemies to lovers going on in this one. And it also features the grumpy sunshine trope, so I thought it was adorable. I liked how Eve has been struggling to find what makes her tick, what she really wants to do for her career, but she interviews for the chef job that she isn't really interested in, but she wants to prove to her parents that she can hold down a job and keep a job and prove that she can be responsible, and she accidentally ends up hitting the guy that interviews her for this job. So the romance goes from there, and she has to help him with his bed and breakfast because he's injured after she accidentally hits him with her car. But it's one I absolutely loved. I like the banter a lot in this one, and we really got to see the family come in together for this one. I also read the bonus epilogue, and I read that on ebook format, so I didn't listen to that. But it is part of Talia Hibbert's newsletter sign up, so if you sign up for her newsletter, you can get access to that bonus epilogue and I believe another short story for free. So I read the bonus epilogue obviously because I love this story, and it was just so cute. It was their wedding day. I loved it. I loved this story so much. It was adorable. I don't know how many more ways I can say that it was beautiful. It was stunning. It was such a sweet story. Their romance really won me over. And I know I really need to read Take a Hint, Danny Brown, because I haven't read that one yet. And it's the last one in the Brown Sisters trilogy that I haven't read by Talia Hibbert. But I love this. It had some great representation in it. Definitely a romance I recommend, and I will be checking out more books by this author. I love her writing style and it really connects with me. So the next thing I read this month was Saga Volume 6. So this I read in the ebook format, and I really liked this. It is the 6th installment of the Saga series, and can I just say I love the illustrations of this one. They're absolutely stunning. Fiona Staples does an amazing job with this, and I just love to look through it. And we really get some more insight into the story of what happens after the cliffhanger of Volume 5. We find out what's happening with the little girl that we're following and her narrative through the story, and kind of how her parents are trying to get her back, and they're trying to find a way that they can be safe in a universe where nowhere feels safe. So I love this one. I love just how relatable and funny all of these volumes have been. Even though they're going through these crazy sci-fi intergalactic experiences, you can really tell that that it's still relatable. They keep it grounded, and I think that's what keeps readers coming back over and over again. If you haven't checked out the Saga comics, I highly recommend them. They're great for reading slumps, and I just think that they're really fun, light, quick reads. They'll add to your Goodreads goal really quickly, and I just love going through comic books. I want to be reading some more graphic novels this year, so hopefully I'll get to some more later on in the year, and I'll finish reading all the Saga comics that are currently out up to the present day, to all the ones that are currently published. The next book I read it physically, but it's not really a book. I would say it's more of a novella, so it's a little novelette. I told you it was 150 pages, and this was my shortest read. And this is from the fantasy author Fonda Lee, and she wrote the Jade City series. I'm not sure what the name of the series is, but that's the name of the first book. And I wanted to test out her writing with this one, so I went in not really having many expectations. I've heard really great things about her fantasy series, but I know that this is a standalone, so I just went in and hopped in and saw what it was about. It follows this girl named Esther who loses her mother and her brother to these demon things called manticores, and these beasts are terrorizing the people. Like, they have free reign. There's only one predator that can really stop them, and they're called rocks. And I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but these rocks are basically the only creatures that can stop them. And so she decides as she gets older that she wants to be a rooker, and she wants to basically train and work with these rocks. And as a rooker, she would have her own rock, and she would chase down manticores and kill them. So it is a story of revenge because of what happened to her family, and she really finds her sense of identity in that, especially after she loses her mom and her brother. Her and her dad feel disconnected. But I don't want to share too much more beyond that because this story is really short. Those are just things that happen right at the very beginning. But I really like this. It is like a 4-star for me. So I don't think it's my favorite fantasy read that I've ever read, but I would still recommend it, and it is a pretty quick read. I liked getting to know more of her writing style in this one because I've never really experienced Fonda Lee's writing style before. So I wanted to test it out, and I really liked it. So I think I will probably give the Greenbone Saga, there we go, a try later on. Maybe not this year, but it is one that I will keep my eye on, and I will give it a try. All right, so the next one that I read was Unloved by Peyton Corinne. This is the second book in the series, so I have to go back and read Unsteady, but I listened to the audiobook of this one also on Libro FM, and I got a free audiobook listening copy for this one. It is a February release, and I was super excited to get to listen to it. It was an amazing experience getting to listen to it, honestly. Definitely the way to go with this story. It had dual narrators, and I really loved just how they brought the two characters to life. So we have Matt, or Freddie, he goes by both in the story, and we have Ro, and they're the two main characters, and you see them go through a lot of ups and downs in their relationships. They have some abusive relationships in their lives, and I won't really go into what that means or who the relationships are with because I don't want to give any spoilers, but just know that there is some abusive relationships in this and some talk of that going on in this book, so be wary of that. If that is something you can't read about, I definitely understand, skip this one, but you kind of see them navigate that. And also Matt has to meet with Ro because she is his tutor. So Matt has dyscalculia, he has dyslexia, and he has ADHD. So he has 3 learning disabilities, and they make it really difficult for him to do well in college. He's just trying to make his way through because he's on the hockey team and he already has an NHL contract lined up for when he graduates, but he wants to graduate. That is a dream of his, and it's something his mom always wanted for him. So he's trying to make it through. He's really struggling, and Ro is his new tutor after his old tutor bailed on him, was like, I can't do this anymore. So she is super smart. She's super determined. She is very intelligent. She wants to get into a graduate program at the university that they're studying at. And she is such a smart, feisty, fierce character. I absolutely love all the ways that she advocates for Matt, or Freddie, in this one. Like, she advocates for all of his needs in this book constantly, and I really appreciate that she's never cowed by the people in authority, and she stands up for what she believes in. So I think that they were a really good pairing. The relationship was really healthy, but they had to go through a lot of struggles to get to the place where they could feel comfortable with each other and have that great relationship. And there's a lot of other things going on in this one. We also get to know more about Sadie, her best friend, who I believe is the main character or the main female character in Unsteady, the first book in the series. So I want to go back and know more about her story, but we get a little bit of background with them, and it's basically trying to navigate the relationship, figure out how to be friends at first and then become lovers. So this is a friends to lovers trope, I would say. and I really like this one. There are some things that were just very real in this though, that were very intense to read about, and that's why I would say this is more of a 4.5 star rather than a 5 star, but it really got to me emotionally and broke me down. It broke down a lot of barriers inside me, and wow, this one was one that will really resonate with me for a very long time. I have not stopped thinking about this book since I finished it, and it might end up on my top reads of 2025 list, to be determined when we get to that point, but it's definitely a top contender. I really enjoyed this, or as much as you can enjoy a story like this, because it was really intense, but I like the representation, I love the relationship, and I like how they work together to navigate their struggles. Alright, so the next book I read it physically, and it is Firefly Lane by Kristen Hannah. So this is following the decades-long friendship between Kate and Talia Hibbert. I know I mentioned this several times. I mentioned this in my 25 books to read in 2025, and I also mentioned this in one of my earlier TBRs this year. It was on my January TBR and my February TBR, I believe, so it's been on a couple, and I finally got around to reading this, and wow, was this a gut punch. Like, that ending really made me sob. But I will say the beginning felt really magical. Like, I love that aspect of it, especially all the scenes that take place in Firefly Lane, and you really get to understand why Tully and Kate become the best friends that they are in this book. So I really like seeing the beginning of their relationship, and that was probably my favorite part. Some of the middle parts, it was just a lot of like progression in their career and things like that, so it wasn't my absolute favorite. And I think this is somewhere around the 4.25 rating for me, because there were just some things I didn't like in this one. I didn't like the jealousy that Kate felt towards Tully over Johnny, especially because it's really unfounded. There's no reason for it. And also the reason why Tully just doesn't call Kate back after she calls her later in the book was just really upsetting to me. But they both do things wrong in this relationship. And I will say that I noticed when comparing the book to the TV series that the friends in this one felt a little more toxic to me. I don't know if that's just something that I noticed or picked up on, but their relationship felt a little more toxic in this one. So maybe I have to go back and rewatch the TV show and see how I feel about the characters there. But I definitely will be doing that. I might read the sequel, I might not. I don't know if I'm going to read Fly Away yet. But there is a sequel, and I'm considering it because I know it goes into Tully's mom's story, so we get to know more about Cloud in that one. But maybe not, because it was really hard reading the end of this. And I think this story can really stand by itself. It doesn't need that sequel. But you can really tell that the author poured her heart and soul into this. It was a very personal story to her, and it really showed through the writing and the narrative. I love that. I love how passionate she was about this story, and I felt really connected to all of the characters in this. You go through a lot of ups and downs with them, but at its heart, the story is about friendship, and it is about mother-daughter relationships as well. So we get the relationship between Kate and her mother, Mrs. Malarkey, at the beginning of this. We also get the relationship between Tully and Cloud, and we get the relationship between Kate and Mara, and all the struggles that each of them face. And I will say that they went through similar patterns, but Cloud was the worst example of a mother in this book. I felt for her in some instances, but I definitely felt more for Tully, and especially not having the background on what happened to Cloud made me feel a little more distant and less connected to her. But I will say I definitely like the themes of family, of love, of friendship, and how those are truly the most important things in life. Like, it really drives that home to you, and I really appreciated reading about that. So this is one I would absolutely recommend. One last note on this, since I forgot to mention it before, but there are a lot of triggers for this. I will say there is trigger for the ending of a life, not someone ending their life, but someone dying in this book. So there is trigger warnings for that. There is trigger warnings for cancer, breast cancer specifically, for chronic illness. So keep those things in mind. There's also triggers for addiction as well, because Cloud has a lot of issues with addiction throughout the book. And abandonment, child neglect, all of that is some themes and triggers that appear in this book. So if those are things you're not comfortable reading, I would probably skip this book. But there are some other triggers that I would recommend looking into online before buying this book or before reading it. But if you are okay reading those things, I would recommend this. All right, and the last thing I read was an audiobook on Libro.fm as well, and it is You're Only Just Beginning, Lessons for the Journey Ahead by Morgan Harper Nichols. And this was really short, so that's why I listened to it. It was very motivational. And after finishing Firefly Lane, I just needed something more uplifting because wow, that drained me. So I listened to this and it was the perfect thing to listen to after. It is a bunch of like poems, a collection and a series of poems that really go into a lot of different topics related to empowerment, to the fact that you just need to be yourself, that you are enough the way that you are, and that just you existing is incredible. And I think it is written by a Black author or an author of color, because some of the language of it gives me that impression, in the sense that she talks about how her ancestors would be so proud of her because she is free, just the fact that she is free. So that's what led me to believe that. But I'll definitely look into it and double check that before I post this. But it is one that I just went through super quickly. It was 2 hours and I listened to it in like an hour and a half, because I listened to it on like 1.5 times speed. And I was just really uplifted by this. It was really great to listen to as I was driving around to little free libraries around me. And I love doing that. I spent a great day listening to this and going to those little free libraries. I recommend this if you're looking for something just quick and empowering and uplifting to listen to or to read. I recommend the audiobook personally because I felt so connected with her words, and just her voice added to the sense of empowerment and just happiness that I felt in listening to it. Like, I felt really connected and joyful reading it, so it was a great experience. All right, so those are the 7 books that I read in the month of February. What books did you end up reading in the month of February, or what ones did you mean to get you that you really want to read that you just didn't for whatever reason? I'd love to know. Please leave that in the comments down below. And what books are you looking forward to reading going forward? I'd love to know that as well. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you for the next one. Wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you are doing well, and I wish you all of the best. I will see you for the next video. Thank you so much for watching.